Hey, what's going on everyone? Today we're going to be taking a look at some footage of Kartofski, and he is quite the powerhouse. In my most recent tier list video, I didn't really know where to rank him since I had not seen any footage of him after his rework, and I personally do not have him unlocked, but since then I have received some footage, and it is some very impressive stuff. So first of all, huge thank you to Captain Flameheart, Funky Blacktron Ace, and Tibster for sharing the footage that you're going to see here today. It is some really cool stuff, and I think Space has some huge potential to definitely be the meta, especially after Gens is released and Kartofski becomes more accessible. So let's take a look at some of these clips. First of all, we have this one from Captain Flameheart with a Gear 7 space team in the Ice Station Odyssey. And as you can see, the battle is almost already finished. This team is completely wiping the floor, and it's just destroying this Ninjago team. So something really valuable with Kartofski, of course, is his anti-stealth synergy, which is incredibly powerful against Master Wu and Lloyd. Earlier in this battle, Kartofski dispelled that stealth on Wu and allowed the space team to go after Wu early into the battle and get him out, which made the rest of this very, very easy. Additionally, with Kartofski's passive, he will have a chance to clear stealth on the weakest enemy every time he deals damage. On top of that, Kartofski can also deal a decent amount of damage by himself, and he can also inflict vulnerable, and that attack by itself can sometimes do upwards of 6,000 damage. So even if he doesn't defeat a unit with that 6,000 hit, that specific special ability, he will also apply that vulnerable, which can then be hit again to take out a unit, which you could potentially use to get out Redbeard in the first turn of a battle. He can also copy buffs with his basic attack, which is very useful up against Ninjago teams. Now that can copy taunt, but he has a pretty high health pool, which can actually be useful to draw fire away from your other units, and you can even get the damage block on him from Kelvin or from Commander Cold, and that is actually pretty helpful. So even though he can copy taunt as well, that isn't the worst thing. And beyond that, he can also apply heal block, which is not healing immunity, but it will still block some healing, and as you can see here, that is very useful up against a pirate team. Also in this battle, buff immunity is being applied on some of these units, like Scarlet, which is very powerful, and that comes from Kelvin and Cold, alongside the Ice Station Odyssey, and that synergy with Chill. Also, with the Galaxy Explorer, if you were using that set instead of the Ice Station Odyssey, you can just dispel those buffs every time you deal damage. And it's actually a pretty high chance to dispel those buffs, as we'll see in just a second here with the next clip. But yeah, this right here is up against a Pirate Ninjago team mix, as you're seeing. And again, not too difficult of a battle. The only real healer here is Quincy, and even then, he doesn't heal that much. That right there was barely a 1k heal, and the team is still mostly at full health, winning this battle pretty easily without too much trouble. Now, I think part of the reason that we haven't seen any space teams really show up in Arena yet, it still kind of seems like a Pirate Ninjago meta, is because most people haven't been going straight to space to upgrade them after the gear and level increase. Most players have been upgrading their existing powerful teams that they already know work well, like Pirates and Ninjago. So that leaves Gear 6 space teams fighting up against Gear 7 level 60 Ninjago or Pirate teams. But some players, like Captain Flameheart here, have actually taken their space team to Gear 7 first, and as you can see, they are definitely quite viable, and they're only going to get better when Gens is released, because Gens looks like an absolutely insane character. Put him in place of maybe Kelvin in this team, or perhaps even Commander Cold, and you have a really, really dominant space team. And also with Kartofski and Gore will hopefully becoming more accessible soon, that will also make the space team even more powerful. Now we're taking a look at a couple clips from Funky Blacktron Ace, and he uses Locust instead of Commander Cold and the Galaxy Explorer instead of the Ice Station Odyssey. Now he shared with me a very thorough breakdown of why this team works and why it is so powerful. There's so much info there that I'm actually going to save that for a separate video, because today I just want to focus on Kartofski, but this team is definitely viable, and Kartofski with the Galaxy Explorer is actually a very nice duo, and also helps to counter teams like Ninjago and Pirates. The constant dispels from the Galaxy Explorer are obviously very powerful to get around Scarlet's taunt, and you can still get that buff immunity on the team with Quincy, of course. Also, I think I forgot to mention this earlier when I was going over his abilities, but you can also apply Disarmed with that ability that can inflict Vulnerable. So that, of course, can be very useful up against Pirates and Ninjago teams as well, since Disarmed is one of the best debuffs in the game. This ability that he's using right here is the one that can do a decent amount of damage, upwards of 6,000 on a critical hit, as well as inflict that Vulnerable, which leads to huge hits like that. 5.5k from Quincy. This is a 6-star Quincy, by the way. And yeah, it can also inflict Disarmed, which makes that ability very powerful, in addition to his AoE Stealth Dispel. Also, his AoE ability that dispels stealth can also increase cooldowns on abilities when that critically hits. So that can also be useful against teams that don't utilize stealth, because cooldown increasing is also a very powerful ability. A common theme you'll notice with this space team is they're largely about control, with of course lots of Disarmed, lots of healing, lots of pep manipulation, like right here with Kelvin and her pep production, and then with Reed's stun, tons of control with this team. And speaking of pep manipulation, with the Galaxy Explorer, Kartofski can sometimes take multiple turns in a row, because when he gains a debuff, he will immediately gain 25% pep because of the Galaxy Explorer's 4th ability, I believe it is, since Kartofski is a techie. And that means gens will also gain that ability to gain insane amounts of pep when inflicted with debuffs, which of course the Pirate team inflicts a lot of. So it's another reason why this team is so good up against Pirates. They'll gain tons of pep, specifically Kartofski and gens, once he is released, up against these debuff heavy teams, and they could potentially take multiple turns back to back to back and just do tons of damage and have tons of control, increase cooldowns, and inflict Disarmed. Overall, it's just a very effective team, and yeah, it is only going to get way better once gens is here. With this team specifically, I think gens would be a good replacement for Kelvin. Kelvin is a pretty good unit, but on defense she's not the greatest, since as we know, the AI doesn't exactly know where to give the damage block, so that's not always perfect, and I assume gens is going to be a beast on defense as well, since his kit looks pretty straightforward AI-wise. I don't really think there's anything that would require fine control to really do well, since he's just like an offensive powerhouse, and also inflicts stuff like Disarmed himself. Speaking of Disarmed, Locust Ultimate here also inflicts Disarmed and does lots of damage, and again, all about that control with the space team. And control is very powerful, because with control you can kind of beat any team as long as you can still do a decent amount of damage. And I think Kartofski definitely helps with that. And in fact, I think in just a second here he's going to land a pretty big basic attack here. Just a basic, yeah, 5.3k on a basic attack. Also, going back to gens for a second, I guess technically he can't apply Disarm, but he can increase its duration, and also apply other useful controlling debuffs like Debilitate, which can of course reduce pep, and Vulnerable, which means the next attack will be a critical hit, which will lead to just even more damage, and of course, more control. And one other thing, since gens is a classic space unit, Reed will also get a bit of a boost with gens in the team, which will make him a bit more effective as well. Alright, well, the final clip here is just sort of a fun one. This one is from Tipster, and this is of a maxed techie team, Gear 7 level 60 techie team, going up against a pirate team with Jester. So not the most viable pirate team. Jester is a solid unit, but not necessarily better than a character like Wu, but it's still kind of crazy that this techie team can beat them, considering there is Clockwork in this team and Zane, two units that are decent but not super viable. Zane is obviously a lot better than Clockwork in my opinion. Clockwork is not the greatest unit ever, but imagine putting gens, another techie unit, in place of Clockwork. Now you've got a really interesting team, and that could be pretty effective. Of course, that's not exactly accessible to most players, since Egon is a bit of a hard farm, but it's still interesting to see that these techie teams do have potential to do well. And also, this battle here was played on full auto, so the fact that this battle was won on full auto with two bad characters in this team is pretty impressive. Of course, that is just a testament to how powerful Egon and Jay are, and also Kartofski here is doing quite a bit as well himself. Anyway, I don't think techie is going to be viable long term. I think space is definitely going to be more powerful, but it's still interesting to see that the team can work even without gens. But yeah, that's about it for this one. So thanks again to Captain Flameheart, Funky Blacktron Ace, and Tipster for sharing their footage. This is some pretty impressive stuff, and I think once Kartofski becomes more accessible, he will be very viable. But that's it for this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.